The film opens with the suffering of a man being tortured by a mysterious figure. Bound and terrified, the man begs to be released after successfully answering every question his captor asks. But instead of granting freedom, the torturer offers something unexpected, a gift, a reward for all the pain he has endured. A few days later, the story shifts to a group of friends who decide to spend their vacation at a secluded villa. Among them is James, the arrogant son of a wealthy official, known for his love of parties and his reckless attitude. He arrives with two women and another man, Anita, a flamboyant girl with a sharp tongue, and others who are no less eccentric, including Melissa, a tomboyish girl who often draws everyone's attention, and Matthew, or Matt, the quiet one among them. Their first night in the villa begins with laughter and teasing, but things gradually turn tense. Out of boredom, James challenges Anita to play a ridiculous game involving Melissa, one that quickly escalates into something uncomfortable. Anita and Melissa grow increasingly irritated, especially when James starts treating them like props in one of his jokes. The tension peaks when a loud noise echoes from outside the villa. Everyone freezes. The once cocky James is pushed by the others, especially the women, to go out and check. Cautiously, he opens the door and steps into the yard, only to find Melissa already out there. But something else catches their attention, a camera lying on the ground, still on and recording. Melissa stares at it suspiciously, suspecting it might have been used by James's father to film private moments. The accusation leaves James silent, his mind racing. Curious, he decides to play the footage to find out what's really on it. Anita tries to stop him, insisting that it's wrong to humiliate his own family. But curiosity soon overwhelms reason. What started as a night of fun begins to turn into the beginning of something far darker. Frustrated by Anita's defiance, James lashes out and throws her out of the living room. Their argument explodes. With arrogance and cruelty, James declares himself the master of the house. Anita, on the verge of tears, can only stare in disbelief. She can't understand how someone could show such disrespect, not only to others but to his own father, whom James often mocks. Her mind drifts to her sick mother at home, how she has struggled to pay for her treatment, borrowing money, pawning valuables, doing whatever it takes to keep her alive. In her despair, Matt, her old friend, tries to comfort her. Though he's still upset that Anita hasn't repaid him for his savings and his beloved motorcycle, he knows this isn't the time to bring it up. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, James suddenly hears footsteps, ones that don't belong to anyone in the villa. He freezes, listening carefully. The sound grows closer, as if someone has entered the villa without permission. Annoyed, James storms out to investigate. Melissa, who's long grown tired of his behavior, tells him to apologize to Anita. But instead of showing remorse, James responds with mockery and sleazy remarks, proving once again that he only cares about himself. As the night deepens, Matt notices something strange. The camera they found earlier is now turned on again and recording, even though no one has touched it. He calls out to his friends, but no one answers. A creeping sense of dread fills the room. When he walks into the living area, he's horrified to see all of his friends unconscious. A strange smell lingers in the air. They've been drugged. A shadow appears in the darkness. A man stands there, staring straight into the camera with a cold, unreadable expression. It's the same man who tortured the victim at the beginning of the story, Miller. Calmly, he adjusts the camera and lights, as though preparing for a performance. Moments later, James and the others wake up, bound and terrified in an unfamiliar room. In front of them stands Miller, wearing a chilling smile and holding a microphone as if hosting a show. With the charm of a twisted entertainer, he greets his audience, a row of lifeless mannequins sitting neatly in chairs. He begins introducing James and his friends one by one, describing their habits and the sins they've tried to hide. The group is shocked by how much he knows. Full names, backgrounds, secrets no one else could possibly know. No one understands who this man truly is, but it's clear he studied them in disturbing detail. In a cold, theatrical voice, Miller announces that tonight he will be hosting another game, the same kind of show he's done before, where life and death are merely parts of the entertainment. He asks his audience to be patient as he prepares the props for the first round. James and his friends exchange terrified looks as Miller picks up a wire cutter and a set of strange tools. None of them understand what kind of game this is supposed to be. Bound and helpless, James begins to suspect the unthinkable, that one of them might have betrayed the group and is working with Miller. The first game, called Paper, Scissors, Rock, Gun, begins. Miller forces everyone to take part. They have no choice but to obey, hoping it's merely a cruel joke that will soon be over. After several rounds, Miller faces Anita directly. To everyone's surprise, she wins. Miller gives a faint smile and declares that the winner has the right to choose someone to be punished. Anita is confused. The rule makes no sense. She refuses to do it, but her refusal only enrages Miller. In a cold, detached voice, he decides to take control himself. The punishment is chosen at random. A scream fills the room as James becomes the first victim. His finger is mercilessly severed. Panic and terror consume the group, while Miller lets out a low chuckle. He warns Anita not to scream too loudly, unless she wants something far worse to happen. The first round ends. Miller leaves the room, telling his audience to wait for a commercial break, as if this were a real television show. Almost an hour passes with no sign of him. James, trembling in pain, keeps asking himself why. Why is this man doing all of this? What's his motive behind such madness? When Miller finally returns, he brings a new device, a large wheel he calls the Wheel of Suffering. Its surface is engraved with a variety of horrifying tortures. He explains that this game will be a test of sin. Each participant must confess their greatest wrongdoing. With his body shaking and pain coursing through him, James admits that he once committed a hit and run. Anita lowers her head, sobbing, and confesses that she once created an illegal website to earn money for her mother's medical bills. Matt admits he's a hacker, responsible for breaking into government and bank databases. And Melissa, with a trembling voice, confesses that she once kidnapped and sold stray dogs. Miller listens to each confession calmly, then orders Melissa to spin the wheel. It spins rapidly, its creaking sound echoing through the room, until it stops on one punishment. Melissa is assigned to play the telescope game. It looks like a harmless toy, but Miller has modified it. Her task is to guess the image appearing inside. But the game is a trap. When Melissa guesses wrong, a blinding flash bursts from the device. Her vision vanishes instantly. She screams in terror, while Miller laughs in delight. Furious, James shouts at Miller, calling him a sick, twisted old man. Miller's face turns cold. He walks up slowly and whispers in James's ear, "Every word you say will make your pain worse." This time, his punishment is far more terrifying. Miller presses a sharp drill against James's ear, making him tremble in horror, realizing he might never hear again after this night. Fortunately, Miller restrains himself. The drill doesn't pierce James's ear completely. Though spared, James is far from safe. As a substitute punishment, Miller orders Anita to clean Matt's injured ear. Anita refuses, but Miller's icy glare forces her to obey. With trembling hands, she does as told while Matt endures excruciating pain. The drill's malfunction only makes Miller angrier. He gathers all the footage of his tortures, recordings he has been making since the beginning, as if archiving his own atrocities. But the victim's suffering doesn't end there. Exhausted, starving, and traumatized, they can barely move after days without food. Melissa stares blankly at James, regretting ever joining what was supposed to be a simple vacation. Calm again, Miller commands them to prepare for the next game. Before starting, he once more stands before the camera, addressing his audience, the lifeless row of mannequins watching in silence. This time, the game takes the form of a survey quiz. Miller claims he has conducted a study and asks each participant to name the body part that feels the most pain. One by one they answer: neck, stomach, chest, head, their voices trembling with fear. Miller compares their answers to his so-called survey results, which are nothing but his own invention. Finally, he announces the outcome. Melissa loses. In a grave voice, Miller says he wants to be fair, so he'll give Melissa a chance to be spared. Anyone among her friends may take her place. James freezes. He wants to step forward, but fear paralyzes him. The silence that follows is deafening. Miller interprets James's silence as refusal. The punishment is carried out. With a brutal thrust, Miller drives a large spear through Melissa's head. Her scream ends abruptly. The room falls silent. Only the sound of dripping blood remains. Miller calmly checks the camera, reviews the footage, then drags her body away, adding it to his growing collection of horrors. Yet behind all this brutality lies something deeper than mere madness. Beneath Miller's cold expression and sarcastic laughter hides an old wound that never healed. Years of resentment and disappointment have become the fuel for his cruelty. But what truly turned Miller into this monster remains a mystery. James, lost in grief, stares blankly at the spot where Melissa once stood. Then Miller turns on a screen, revealing an old recording, a young woman participating in a similar game. Anita recognizes the face instantly. Her blood runs cold. The woman in the video is someone she knows. With a pale face and trembling voice, Anita pleads for mercy, but Miller only stares at her, calm, unblinking, as if he has been waiting for this moment all along. James, utterly confused, finally learns the bitter truth. Anita knows Miller. Years ago, Miller had been her boss, a famous television host in the entertainment industry. Back then, Anita worked as his production assistant on a popular quiz show. But their relationship ended in a dark scandal. Through Anita's trembling confession, a horrifying past is revealed. She and two of her friends were once victims of Miller's inappropriate behavior, a man once admired for his charm and friendly physical touch. Pressured by her friends, Anita was persuaded to accuse Miller publicly, turning the incident into a legal case that could earn them a large settlement. That money, she believed, would save her dying mother. The guilt from that decision has haunted her ever since. But the man standing before her now is no longer the charismatic TV host she once knew. Miller has become something else, a monster, using his show as a twisted stage for revenge against the world that mocked and destroyed him. His every move radiates hatred and madness. Before his terrified captives, he stands tall, a man stripped of his humanity, consumed by resentment and trauma, now reborn as the host of a deadly performance. That night, tension fills the air. Suddenly, Miller shifts the atmosphere into something disturbingly festive. With a mocking grin, he announces that tonight is special. It's Anita's birthday. He lights candles on a hardened, stale cake and, with the same showman flair he once had, claps his hands and invites his audience of mannequins to celebrate. Behind his forced laughter lies a deep bitterness, a cruel parody of his ruined past and of the woman he blames for it. In a flashback, Miller's downfall unfolds. Once a celebrated TV host, his habit of inappropriate physical contact at work finally caught up with him. During a live taping, a senior crew member confronted him in front of everyone. The set fell silent. Humiliation turned into fury, a rage he would carry for years. Not long after, Anita, with the help of a lawyer, decided to file a formal report. Miller tried to make peace, but rumors spread like wildfire. His career collapsed overnight. During a private settlement meeting, Anita signed a non-disclosure agreement, accepting a large amount of hush money, paid directly by Miller himself. She used that money to pay for her mother's medical treatment. Afterward, Anita left town and vanished from the entertainment world. Now, that buried past has clawed its way back. Inside the holding room, James, still desperate to survive, tries to negotiate. He promises to help Miller regain his fame, even offering to use his father's powerful connections. But Miller simply stares, his expression hollow. "I don't need fame," he says coldly. "I've already lost everything. My family, my name, my life. Now, you'll all join me in the wreckage." The air thickens with dread. Then, Miller unveils a gruesome sight. The severed head of Anita's former lawyer, now nothing but bone and hair. Anita screams in horror, realizing that Miller has murdered everyone connected to his downfall. Without warning, Miller presses a button on his remote. The metal collars around their necks spark to life, sending electric shocks that paralyze their bodies. When the current stops, Miller steps back into the center of the room, announcing the next game. James and Matt flinch in pain, noticing long surgical scars across their stomachs, stitched crudely, as if from an operation done without anesthesia. Miller tosses a knife to the floor in front of Anita, who's barely conscious. With a sinister smile, he says, "If you want to live, take the key from inside one of them." Anita freezes. The words don't make sense until she realizes the horror of it. The key to freedom has been hidden inside the bodies of James and Matt. Panic-stricken, James pleads with her to choose Matt instead. He promises money, anything she wants, even medical care for her mother. But Anita looks at Matt through tears. She knows how much he has sacrificed for her, how he has always cared selflessly. With trembling hands and a breaking heart, Anita chooses James. She cries hysterically as she retrieves the key, horrified by what she's done. But when she tries to open the door, it doesn't budge. Miller lets out a quiet, mocking laugh. "You're wrong," he says softly. "The real key is inside Matt." Anita turns toward Matt, her face pale with despair. She knows she has already lost this game. Miller then announces the next and final challenge. Only one survives. The last one standing wins. Time passes in silence. Anita lays the knife on the floor, refusing to fight. Matt picks it up slowly. Their eyes meet one last time, filled with sorrow and forgiveness. Then, Matt turns the blade on himself, plunging it into his own chest. He collapses into Anita's arms. Her sobs echo through the concrete room, while Miller watches expressionlessly. He lifts a canister and sprays a sedative gas, making Anita lose consciousness. In the metallic haze of blood and chemicals, she's dragged out, toward what Miller calls the bonus round, the final act of his horrific show, from which no one ever returns. When Anita regains consciousness, she finds herself in what looks like a dressing room, cold, cluttered, suffocating with memories of the past. Miller isn't there yet. Searching frantically, Anita discovers stacks of recording equipment, old show posters, and worn-out scripts, evidence of Miller's obsession with reclaiming his former glory. Among the debris, she finds footage of his past atrocities, not just the torture of her friends, but countless others, innocent people who met the same fate. Moments later, Miller reappears, his face calm, but his eyes blazing with insanity. In front of Anita, he sets down 3 mysterious boxes. With a voice dripping in sarcasm, he announces the final game. "It's simple," he says. "Just pull one string from these 3 gifts. I promise, no weapons, no traps this time." Terrified and trembling, Anita closes her eyes and begins to pray, then does as she's told. However, before pulling the string, Anita asked in a trembling voice, "Why are you doing all this, Miller? You used to be such a kind man, the one who always made everyone laugh." Miller only gave a bitter smile. He replied that all that joy had died the day Anita and her friends destroyed his reputation. He had lost his job, his family, and his dignity. To him, the world that was once filled with laughter now held nothing but hatred and emptiness. Anita tried to calm him down, promising that she would take back everything she'd said and clear his name in public. But Miller refused. According to him, nothing could ever be fixed. In his madness, Miller began talking about his old dreams, about wanting to be a good father and a man of purpose, just like in the charity shows he used to host. He rambled about creating a new show where he would give money to the poor and help the sick, like Anita's mother. But behind his words, it was clear his mind was completely warped by trauma and vengeance. Finally, Anita pulled one of the strings. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But when she tried to run, the shock collar around her neck reactivated, sending a surge of electricity through her body. She collapsed, convulsing on the cold floor, while Miller laughed with satisfaction. It was the start of the bonus round of his twisted show. Miller brought out a large birthday cake and ordered Anita to come closer. Claiming to celebrate her birthday, he suddenly shoved her face into the cake. Anita screamed in panic, certain there was a hidden trap inside. But to her surprise, the cake seemed perfectly ordinary. After a few moments, Miller released her restraints. Speaking in a calm, almost gentle tone, he said, "Good news and bad news. The good news is, you're free to go, no conditions." Anita stared at him, stunned, barely able to believe what she was hearing. Then Miller added in a quiet voice, "The bad news is, that cake you just tasted was laced with acid and poison." Seconds later, Anita's body began to convulse violently. She fell to the ground, her skin blistering and melting from the chemical reaction of the toxin that coated the cake. Miller stood still, watching with a look of twisted satisfaction, as if he were delivering justice rather than committing murder. In his delusional mind, all his victims were sinners, corrupt officials, manipulators, and those who had destroyed his life. The final scene played on a flickering monitor, a recording of Miller torturing a man who had once assaulted a woman. In the end, he killed the man brutally, blood splattering across the camera lens. And then the film ended.